Phil Knight jolted awake from a nightmare. Except it wasn't just a dream, it was his real life hitting him hard. He felt stuck, no clear purpose, no direction. Back at the University of Oregon, he studied journalism and got hooked on running, where he met legendary track coach Phil Bowerman, an Olympic-level trainer with serious reputation. Phil trained under Bowerman as a middle-distance runner, and they built a strong bond fast. Neither of them knew it yet, but that connection would later spark one of the biggest sports empires ever. After graduating in 1959, though, Phil still had no clue what his next move was. Deep down, he wanted to be a top athlete. But at 24, reality hit. He wasn't good enough. That dream was over, and it stung. Feeling lost, he joined the army, hoping discipline would fix things. It didn't. He came out frustrated and searching for something more. So he headed to Stanford Business School, and that's where everything flipped. During a class assignment, Phil wrote a bold idea. Can Japanese sports shoes do to German sports shoes what Japanese cameras did to German cameras? That single question lit a fire and changed everything. At the time, Adidas and Puma were running the game in America. No competition, no pressure, just straight dominance. But Phil had been hearing whispers. Japanese companies were testing fresh shoe designs, and even better, they could make them way cheaper. That idea stuck in his head heavy. He went all in on his class project, convinced this could flip the entire market. But when he presented it, nothing. No hype, no excitement, just blank stares. Even his own friends brushed it off like it was nothing. Still, chasing it for real felt almost impossible. Phil didn't know anyone in Japan, had zero experience importing products, and no clue how to sell shoes in the US. It sounded wild, but he couldn't shake it. After graduating in 1962, he was back home with his parents, feeling that same pressure closing in, like life was slipping past him. Then one day, something clicked. No more waiting around. If opportunity wasn't showing up, he was going to build it himself. So Phil and a friend packed up and took off on a world trip. Through Europe, across Asia, even stopping in Greece to see the Temple of Athena. But the whole time, that one idea stayed locked in his mind. Japan was the real mission. Nike, named after the goddess of victory. But before that name meant anything, Phil's journey took a wild turn in Hawaii, and that's where everything shifted. He and his friend fell in love with the island life, surfing, relaxing, just living free. They even took jobs in Honolulu, knocking on doors selling encyclopedias just to afford staying longer in that paradise. But Phil wasn't built for sales like that. He was quiet, struggled to connect, and it showed. Soon enough, he knew it was time to move on. His friends stayed behind after meeting a girl, but Phil kept going solo, and now he was locked in. No distractions. Japan was next, and this time it was serious. In 1962 in Kobe, Phil spotted a pair of running shoes that instantly grabbed him. The Tiger brand by Onitsuka. Clean design, strong quality, and most important, they were affordable. He wasted no time and called the company to set up a meeting, feeling that mix of nerves and excitement. He even bought a guide on doing business with the Japanese and studied it hard, making sure he walked in ready. Even with zero real business experience, Phil walked into that meeting and introduced himself like he was already legit. An American shoe distributor ready to push their products across the US. And somehow, it worked. Onitsuka had already been looking for a way into the American market, so Phil showing up with that exact idea got them seriously interested. They could tell he was young, fresh out of university, no real track record. But he came prepared. Phil had stacked his mind with stats and facts about the US shoe market, and during the meeting, he delivered it smoothly, almost like he'd been doing this for years. The managers were impressed, until one simple question hit him. What's the name of your company? Just like that, pressure shot up. Because the truth was, there was no company. Just an idea and a lot of nerve. For a split second, his mind went blank. He felt completely outmatched, like he didn't belong in that room. Then suddenly, a memory hit. Those blue ribbons from his childhood hanging on his wall. After a brief pause, he looked at them and said, "Gentlemen, I represent Blue Ribbon Sports of Portland, Oregon." He basically made that company name up on the spot. No plan, no backup, just pure instinct. Honestly, he never thought he'd even get that far. But once he said it, something clicked, his confidence shot up. He started breaking down the American market, explaining how Onitsuka Tiger shoes were different from anything in the US and why that gap meant big opportunity. The energy flipped fast. Now the Japanese team was the one leaning in, pitching him. They wanted Phil as their US distributor, and of course, he said yes. He asked them to send sample shoes to America, and just like that, his wild idea felt real. But then, nothing. 1 month passed, then 2, 3, 4. Still no shoes. Phil was back home, confused and stressed. The meeting had gone so well. So what happened? He even paid $50 for those samples. When he followed up, they replied, "Shoes coming in just a little more days." Back at his parents' house, his dad just laughed and said, "Son, that $50 is long gone." That hit hard. Thinking he got played, Phil took a job as an accountant, but he hated it. Then one morning, boom! A package landed on his doorstep. 12 pairs, straight from Japan. They looked amazing. Exactly what he hoped for. No hesitation, he grabbed them and went straight to his old coach, Bill Bowerman, ready to hear what he thought. Bowerman was a big name in running, and he was obsessed with making shoes better. Always tweaking, always experimenting. Back when Phil trained with him, he'd literally cut open athletes' shoes, mess with the padding, swap in lighter materials, then stitch them back up like nothing happened. Yeah, some of those experiments made runners uncomfortable, but a lot of the time, he actually made the shoes faster and more comfortable. One thing was clear. Bowerman knew shoes at a different level, and that's exactly why Phil needed his opinion on these Japanese samples. And here's the shock. Bowerman loved them. Not just liked them. He believed in them so much, he asked to join Phil as a business partner. That was huge. This was a top-level coach with deep knowledge and real credibility. So they teamed up and launched Blue Ribbon Sports, each putting in $500, every dollar going toward 300 pairs of shoes from Japan at about $3.33 each. Phil even pushed further, asking Onitsuka for exclusive rights in the Western US, and they said yes. By April 1964, the shipment arrived, 300 pairs ready to move. Phil had the product, the partner, and the deal locked in. But there was one big problem. No one wanted to sell them. Local sports stores brushed him off like he didn't matter. They said they didn't need another running shoe. So Phil faced reality. If nobody else would sell the shoes, he'd do it himself. With 300 pairs sitting there, he hit the ground running, literally. Phil started pulling up to track meets and running clubs, popping open his trunk, and selling shoes right there on the spot. He'd pitch them to runners, coaches, anyone watching, and that energy paid off. With his drive and Bowerman's connections, they sold all 300 pairs in just 3 months. Crazy part? Phil used to struggle badly with sales. Back when he was going door to door with encyclopedias, it was a mess. But this felt different. Selling these shoes came naturally. People could feel he believed in the product, and that confidence made them trust it. The demand was real. High-quality shoes at a good price hit hard. By the end of year 1, Blue Ribbon Sports pulled in $8,000 in sales. Phil didn't slow down. He reinvested and ordered 900 more pairs from Japan. Then things leveled up. They brought in sales reps, mostly former runners, hungry and working on commission, earning $2 per pair. These guys were everywhere, hitting high school and college meets across the country. With that growth, Phil secured a bank loan and moved the business out of his parents' basement into a real office. Bowerman stayed coaching, so Phil hired their first full-time employee, Jeff Johnson, the guy who would later create the name Nike. But for now, Blue Ribbon Sports was booming fast in 1966. They finally opened their own retail store, but this wasn't just any shop. It was a full-on hub for runners. A place to hang out, talk, and dive into shelves packed with running books. That vibe pulled people in fast and gave the brand serious attention. While Phil and Johnson handled the business side, Bowerman stayed locked in on creativity. Every time a shipment came in from Japan, he'd grab a few pairs, tear them apart, and study every detail. Then he'd sketch out improvements and send notes back to the manufacturer, pushing for better designs in the next batch. At this point, Bowerman was basically shaping the future of those shoes, and he didn't stop there. He coached rising stars and future Olympians, building hype and credibility around the brand. Even bigger, he helped make jogging a real trend. Back then, jogging wasn't even popular, but Bowerman dropped a book that sold over 1 million copies and changed everything. Suddenly, everyone wanted to run, and they needed shoes. One of his designs, the Cortez, exploded and became the top-selling shoe in 1969, pushing Blue Ribbon Sports to around $300,000 in revenue. Everything looked perfect with Onitsuka, but behind the scenes, trouble was already building. This Nike story shows how tough it really is to bring an idea to life. Phil literally started by selling shoes out of his car, but today, things move way faster. Now, anyone with an idea can jump online and start selling without all that struggle. Shopify makes it simple, no tech skills needed. You can build a clean, professional store in just a few clicks and start taking payments almost instantly. It saves serious time and lets you focus on actually growing your business. For a lot of people, the goal is freedom, being able to work from anywhere and still make money. That's exactly what tools like this make possible now, turning ideas into real income streams. Now back to Phil. He pushed things even further. He asked Onitsuka for exclusive rights across all of America, not just the West Coast. At first, they doubted him. They wanted a bigger company with East Coast offices. Phil didn't hesitate. He said, "But we do have offices on the East Coast." That wasn't even true. But it worked. Onitsuka believed him, saw potential, and locked in the deal. Just like that, Blue Ribbon became the exclusive US distributor, and Phil went big, ordering 20,000 pairs. An Onitsuka executive said the shipment was sent to Blue Ribbon's East Coast office, which didn't even exist. That lie was now catching up fast. So right after the meeting, Phil scrambled to raise money, sending out flyers asking people to invest in Blue Ribbon Sports, a fast-growing shoe company ready to expand. They waited, and nothing happened. Not a single response. It was embarrassing and stressful. Nobody believed in the vision, and no one wanted to risk their money. At the same time, Phil and Bowerman truly respected Onitsuka's shoes. The quality was real, and the partnership had boosted both sides. Blue Ribbon made Tiger a serious name in the US, and it felt like a perfect match. But behind the growth, pressure was building. New stores were opening fast, and that success came with a dangerous problem. Cash flow was getting tight, and the risks were stacking up. Phil was under pressure from every angle. More warehouses, more staff, more inventory. The Cortez was blowing up across America, selling out faster than they could restock. He kept pushing Onitsuka to speed things up, but they stayed moving slow like nothing was wrong. Later, Phil found out the truth, and it hit hard. Onitsuka was prioritizing their Japanese customers first and only sending leftover stock to the US. That move put Blue Ribbon in a tough spot, and there wasn't much Phil could do about it. It got worse. The ideas and upgrades Phil and Bowerman sent over, delayed or straight up ignored. Bowerman was putting in real work on new designs, so this lack of respect made things tense. Trying to fix it, Phil set up a meeting with an Onitsuka rep named Ka, but the vibe was off from the start. Ka downplayed Blue Ribbon's sales and didn't seem interested in renewing a long-term deal. Phil couldn't believe it. His company had built Tiger's name in the US. Sales were rising every year. He even showed proof. 70% of American runners were wearing or owned their shoes. At that point, suspicion turned real. It was starting to look like Onitsuka was lining up other partners, and something felt seriously wrong. So the moment Katani stepped out, Phil made a move. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder, and what he saw changed everything. Inside was a list of 18 US distributors and a full meeting schedule. That's when it hit. Onitsuka was secretly planning to replace Blue Ribbon and level up with bigger partners. After everything Phil had built for them, this felt like a straight betrayal. Blue Ribbon had made Tiger a real force in America, and now they wanted to move on to more experienced distributors to grow even bigger. Phil was furious, but more than that, it stung. He called them out. reminding them there was still a contract in place for another year. But Onitsuka didn't back down. They hit him with an ultimatum: sell 51% of Blue Ribbon, or they walk and partner with others. Phil didn't hesitate. He refused. No way he was giving up control of his company. But now it was clear. Things had turned into a battle. After the shock wore off, Phil and Bowerman flipped their mindset. Losing Onitsuka might actually be a blessing. Why stay a middleman when they could build their own brand? The Cortez, Onitsuka's top seller, was Bowerman's design anyway. So why not take control, create their own shoes, and run the whole game themselves? Just like that, the team came together and got to work on something original. Before anything else, they needed a name. And Phil's first idea? Dimension 6. Yeah, nobody was feeling it. Then Jeff Johnson stepped in and said a name came to him in a dream the night before. Let's call it Nike. Phil just stared at him like, what? It's the Greek-winged goddess of victory, Johnson explained. That hit different. Phil remembered the temple he saw while traveling, and the connection to winning made sense for a sports brand. Still, he wasn't fully sold on the name at first, but time was running out fast. With no better options, Phil made the call. Nike it is. Next up, the logo. They hired a graphic design student, and she created the now famous Swoosh. She got paid just $35 for it. Crazy when you think about it now. Now they had a name, a logo, but they still needed one major piece: a manufacturer. They had the design ready, a fresh version of the Cortez with the Nike branding, but finding the right factory was a struggle. Early attempts had serious quality issues. At a team meeting, Phil laid it out straight. Our partnership with Onitsuka is over and we're completely on our own. The pressure was real. They had the Nike line ready, but problems with quality and time were closing in fast. Phil looked around the table and saw it. Everyone slumped, quiet, defeated. It felt like losing Onitsuka had crushed the whole company. But Phil knew he had to flip that energy fast. So he switched it up and said, "This is the moment we've been waiting for." Heads started lifting. Then he hit them with it. No more selling someone else's brand. Onitsuka had been holding them back for years. Late shipments, messed up orders, ignoring their ideas. "This isn't a crisis, it's freedom," he pushed. And just like that, the mood shifted. You could feel the energy come back into the room. Suddenly, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like a fresh start. The team got locked in, focused on making Nike work and finding the right manufacturers. But this time, Phil played it smarter, no relying on just one partner. He built a whole network, giving them control and flexibility. Still, Onitsuka wasn't done. They sued, claiming Nike broke their contract. Phil fired back, accusing them of trying to replace Blue Ribbon behind the scenes. In the end, both sides settled and split. Then in 1971, it became official. Blue Ribbon Sports transformed into Nike, and by then, they were already hitting $1 million in annual sales. From that point on, Nike didn't just grow, it exploded. By the 1972 Olympics, the brand was everywhere, grabbing global attention and putting itself on the map in a big way. The numbers went crazy. Revenue hit $14 million in 1976, then doubled to $28 million in 1977. Phil kept pushing hard, opening factories worldwide and pouring every dollar back into expansion. It was risky, but it was working. Nike wasn't just taking over the sports market. It was becoming a full-on style statement. But success like that brings enemies. Other American brands were watching closely, waiting for a chance to strike. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Strong sales, growing hype, and past legal issues behind them. But behind the scenes, there was pressure. Nike was still low on cash because Phil kept reinvesting everything and even borrowing more to grow faster. To him, it was simple: grow or fall behind. So he kept scaling up. More shoes, more stores, more staff. He even started thinking about taking Nike public. Then everything flipped overnight. A letter arrived from US Customs demanding $25 million. At first, it sounded unreal, but after checking, it was true. And if they had to pay, Nike was finished. What really happened was brutal. Nike's American competitors, Keds, Converse, and others, were getting nervous. Nike was growing fast, and they saw it as a real threat that could push them out of the market, so they made a move behind the scenes. They went to Washington and pushed officials to enforce something called American Selling Price, a forgotten rule from way before the Great Depression. This rule said if a shoe was made in the US, then any similar shoe imported from another country gets hit with a tax based on the American product's price. It was meant to protect local businesses, but now it was being used as a weapon. Nike's rivals copied their shoes, priced them super high, and created a fake American alternative. Then, because Nike was manufacturing overseas, they got slammed with massive import fees. That added around $6 extra per pair, huge damage at scale. But it got even worse. The government backdated those charges 3 years, stacking everything into one massive hit, that $25 million bill. Phil knew one thing: there was no way to pay it. If he didn't fight back, Nike was done. Phil didn't back down. He hired top lawyers and went to war. For 3 intense years, Nike battled the customs office, Converse, Keds, all of them, in court. It was non-stop pressure. Phil even took it public, dropping a TV commercial explaining the situation and getting people on Nike's side. That move hit hard. The message spread, and support started building. Eventually, the pressure worked. Nike's rivals and officials realized this fight wasn't going away. They settled, but not without damage. The $25 million bill dropped to $9 million, still painful, but survivable. And here's the twist. During that whole battle, Nike kept growing. Sales exploded to $440 million. So even after paying up, they came out stronger. Then came the breakthrough. In 1980, Nike went public, and just like that, cash flow problems disappeared. Growth went into overdrive. Phil owned 46% of the company, turning him incredibly wealthy. But one moment stood out more than anything. Remember the parents who risked everything with that $8,000? They didn't do it for profit, they just wanted to help. But they got shares. After Nike went public, Phil told them the news. Their $8,000 had turned into $1.6 million. That $8,000 turning into $1.6 million changed everything for them. They couldn't even believe it. And from there, Nike just kept leveling up. Phil kept expanding, locking in deals with factories in China, making Nike the first American shoe company allowed to operate there. That move was huge. They also stepped into clothing, opening new streams of money and making the brand even stronger. This gave them serious power when it came to athlete deals. Nike wasn't just offering shoes anymore, they were offering full deals. And they played it smart, signing young talent early, names like Tiger Woods and LeBron James before they became global icons. But the biggest move? Michael Jordan. Nike saw his potential early and locked him in. As he rose, Air Jordans exploded, bringing in hundreds of millions. By 1986, Nike had passed Converse and became the top sports brand in America. Everything looked unstoppable. But there was a darker side building in the background. In 1991, everything shook. A report dropped accusing Nike of using child labor and exploiting workers in poorer countries, and it hit their reputation hard. The reports were shocking. They claimed workers were living in terrible conditions, crowded slums, open sewers, and shared basic facilities with huge numbers of families. Inside the factories, things didn't look any better. Tight spaces, unsafe buildings, and long hours under serious pressure. Workers were said to have limited access to clean water or proper breaks, and after exhausting shifts, they were paid extremely low wages. Then in 2001, a BBC documentary added even more heat, highlighting poor conditions in a Cambodian factory linked to Nike. The footage focused on young workers putting in long hours, sometimes up to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. That sparked global backlash. Students and activists protested, some called for boycotts, and universities started cutting ties. The impact was real. Sales dropped, and Nike stock fell by 15%. The brand that once looked unstoppable was now facing heavy criticism. Phil Knight had always seen Nike as one of the good guys, but now the narrative flipped. This was a different kind of battle. He responded by promising to improve factory conditions worldwide. Over the next decade, Nike worked to rebuild trust. But the reality remained complicated, with global manufacturing at the center of it all. To be fair, Nike did make real changes to improve conditions for overseas workers. Many human rights groups even recognized their efforts to reduce these issues. But the controversy didn't fully disappear. A 2005 internal report revealed serious problems still existed. Workers in nearly half of their factories were putting in 60-hour weeks, earning below minimum wage, or lacking proper access to basic needs like bathrooms and clean water. Then years later, in December 2021, another wave hit. A European human rights group filed a criminal complaint against Nike and other brands, alleging links to forced labor in China. Now, looking at the other side, Phil argued those factories weren't actually owned by Nike. They were third-party facilities used by multiple companies. That doesn't erase the issue, but it does show how complex the system is. The reality? Nike isn't alone in this. Many global brands rely on overseas labor with questionable conditions somewhere in their supply chains. A lot of everyday products come from similar setups. And when you dig deep into big companies, there's often a side people don't see. What stands out with Nike is how they kept growing, even through all this controversy. In 2018, Nike dropped a bold ad called Dream Crazy, featuring former NFL player Colin Kaepernick, and it instantly sparked controversy. The campaign showed a black and white close-up of his face with the words, "Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything." That line hit hard. It tied back to 2016, when Kaepernick kneeled during the U.S. national anthem to protest racial injustice and police brutality, a move that divided the country. Many people criticized him, saying it was disrespectful. So when Nike backed him, reactions exploded. Their stock dipped 2.5%, and some people publicly destroyed Nike gear and called for boycotts. But then the twist came. Supporters rallied behind Nike, buying and wearing the brand as a statement. The attention went global. The results were massive. Nike gained $6 billion in brand value, pulled in $163 million in media exposure, and saw sales jump by 31%. The ad even won an Emmy for Outstanding Commercial in 2019. In the end, the backlash barely slowed them down, and once again, controversy turned into serious growth. Back in 1988, Nike dropped its first Just Do It campaign, and it wasn't playing it safe. One ad featured an 80-year-old marathon runner still crushing 17 miles every morning. Then in 1995, they pushed even further with a campaign spotlighting an HIV-positive runner. Real stories, real risks. So why take these bold swings? Simple. Strategy. Nike's marketing team carefully weighs risk versus reward and makes calculated moves. They know controversy brings attention, and attention drives growth. And it worked. Between 1988 and 1998, Nike's sales exploded from $800 million to $9.2 billion. That's not luck. That's bold execution. After 40 years, Phil stepped down as CEO, leaving behind a wild legacy, from a confused young man with an idea to building the biggest sports brand on the planet. Now think about it. What's your idea? Because one thing is clear, the timing will never be perfect. If you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, share this video, and drop a comment below.